My name is Sandy Adomaitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey, writers and friends, it's Sandy coming to you from Studio City, the crown jewel of the San Fernando Valley. Tonight, as I record this intro, the planet Saturn is supposed to be visible against the new moon, but I can't see it because if I move, I would disturb my cat. We have a fantastic episode for you. My guest is screenwriter, producer, and stand-up comedian Patricia Resnick, best known as the creator and writer of the iconic film 9 to 5 and the author of the book for 9 to 5, the musical. She was among the writer-producers on TV's Mad Men and Better Things. Writers and friends, this episode is a gift. Patricia not only shares her journey of becoming a successful working screenwriter, but also describes how she, as a single mom, navigated a writing career during a time when women at work were often called the girl. I'd also like to dedicate this episode to Luke and Darlene Chan, my dragon. Patricia Resnick, thank you so much for joining us on the Writers Hangout.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
Hey, it's a bit of a sad day that we're recording. We lost Robert Redford today.
Yes, I was shocked because somehow in my mind, he was not 89. And I was lucky enough to meet him through Jane Fonda. Years ago, when we were working on the script for 9 to 5, she was shooting Electric Horseman in St. George, Utah. And she had a little dinner party just for herself, Redford, me, her producing partner, and our studio exec, because we were all...
Patricia, get out of town. You were in an intimate dinner with Robert Redford.
I was, and I have to tell you, for a while it was a bit disappointing because I always loved movies and loved show business, and so I was looking forward to having them talk about Barefoot in the Park and the other things they'd done together. And during dinner, all they talked about was the problems of sewage in Utah. But during the course of dinner and after, enough vodka was had that eventually I was able to get them onto reminiscing a bit.
How wonderful. Do you have a favorite Redford movie?
I think it's a tie between Butch Cassidy and The Way We Were. And as far as his directing, definitely, I just blanked with Mary Tyler Moore and Timothy Hutton.
Ordinary People. For me, I think it is All the President's Men. And one movie that I'm going to have to revisit, I think I was a little too young to watch it, was Barefoot in the Park. Not because it was R-rated or anything like that. It was very hard for me to watch a woman stay at home waiting for her husband to come home all day. But that...
Well, it's very dated.
Yes.
It's very dated. Some things hold up better than others. Yeah.
Your career started when you met Robert Altman while studying at USC, which for the writers out there that don't know, the University of Southern California, and you began working with him on 3 Women. How does one run into Robert Altman?
I was born and raised in Miami Beach, Florida. And I was completely obsessed with movies and theater. My mom always had wanted to be an actress, which she wasn't. She got married very young and had a family. And back then it was hard to do both. But she took me to just a tremendous amount of theater in New York and movies. And so when I came out to LA to do my last 2 years of college at USC and study film, anytime I was driving around town and I saw trucks that indicated something was being shot, I always pulled over and I would walk over and ask what they were shooting and who the director was. And I was in Westwood and I saw some trucks and I asked, and it was Robert Altman, and I was a huge fan. And I actually had to write a paper for a class on an American director. And so I waited on the sidewalk until he was working on a movie, by the way, named, not one of his better known ones, California Split. But they were shooting in an office building, and I waited outside till he came out. And I introduced myself and I told him I was writing a paper on him for school. And I asked him if I could make an appointment to interview him for the paper, which he said, okay. And I did. And then when I finished the paper, I dropped it off at his office. And a couple of days later, he called me, which was an incredible thrill. And he loved the paper. He thought it was the best thing anyone ever wrote about him and his movies. And he told me the next time he had a movie, he wanted to hire me. And that took about a year. So I finished school. And right after I finished school, I went to work for him on a movie also no one ever heard of called Buffalo Bill and the Indians.
Patricia Resnick, you have just told this most wonderful story that I think will really benefit our writers out there who are trying to break into the business. There's no set of rules. I so admire what you did. Pretty gutsy, very cool. I really did think you were going to say something along the lines of, oh, I was taking a class and I got to meet him after class. But you, wow, nothing gets in your way.
I had more guts than brains at that point. And
It's something that I don't have a lot of backup for this, but this keeps going in my head. You have the number 3 and 3 women throughout your career. Starting with 3 women, a couple of your movies of the week had 3 women like Parker Posey, Shirley MacLaine, and I'm forgetting Shannon Doherty, may she rest in peace. And then just 9 to 5. Did you ever reflect on that at all? That 3 is a very good number for you?
It's funny, no. But just the other day, I was talking to one of my cousins, and he brought up out of nowhere a script that I wrote in the 70s that didn't get made. Alan Pakula became attached to it, but it was called 3 After 30. I definitely knew at that point that numbers in my titles were going to be a thing. Thought about specifically the number 3, but I will now.
Cool. Now, I came up in development of TV movies, and you wrote many of them. The Battle of Mary Kay in 2002, Sex, Lies, and Obsessions in Perfect Match. Can we talk about the world of TV movies?
Sure.
For the writers out there, they may want to start out in film, television, half-hour comedy, but that's a genre. And when you were making all these TV movies, how did that come about?
So basically what happened was when I started working for Altman, I didn't really have a lot of interest in television at the time. I just wanted to do movies. And back then, movies and TV were very separate. That's not true anymore. Almost everyone moves very easily back and forth between them, but back then they were very divided.
Yes.
And so I just worked on movies. And then I actually had 2 kids on my own in my early 40s.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And at the time, I was adapting a book for Whoopi Goldberg, and I was being paid a lot of money. And everything seemed good. And then things started to change. And whether it was partly my age, partly that they stopped making the kind of movies that I wrote. And I was sole support of 2 kids, so I had to figure something out. And although at that time, nobody was interested anymore in me writing movies, features, for TV movies, I was considered a big get.
Oh, Patricia, if you came into Davis Entertainment while I was working in TV development, we would have put rose petals out before your feet.
Which Davis?
John.
At Fox?
He was at Fox down on the lot and the film department. And then we were up in Fox Plaza.
So funny because at one point, I'm thinking a little before this, I had an overall deal at Fox and I had an office on the Fox lot. And it was right down the hall from John Davis.
Oh, yes, that bungalow, Brooks. Yes.
It's over on the side toward the west. Anyway, he was very nice to me. And he liked to bring people that had come in to see him to my office. I had my 9 to 5 poster up and whatever else I had on the wall. And he liked to bring them in and say, this is Pat Resnick and she wrote 9 to 5. And
Aww.
Yeah.
Very sweet.
It was. That's funny that you worked with him.
Going back to TV movies.
Yeah. Anyway, I needed to do whatever I could do to continue to support my family. So I started doing TV movies. And what I found out pretty quickly was, although they didn't pay what features paid, they mostly got made. And I could write them fairly quickly. And I was able to do a bunch of them, just one after the other. And then that whole business died. Just TV movies went away. So that was then time to pivot again. But yeah, for a while, I wrote some Hallmark movies. I wrote some Lifetime movies. The Battle of Mary Kay was for CBS, which was an unusual thing for them because it was a satire.
What a wonderful movie. Very funny.
Thank you.
Yeah, very funny.
I think that was definitely my favorite of everything that I did in terms of TV movies. That was for sure my favorite.
I remember when we worked at Davis that the feature people, whenever they didn't like a feature movie, they would always go, oh, maybe it's good for TV. And they were always a little taken aback when we, the TV development people, were like, no, it's not right for us. I think just back then, and going back to also what you said about TV and film being so different, that was really true. If you worked on a TV set, feature people didn't want to hire you. But then Davis people would always turn to us and say, hire our feature people. And we'd go, they shoot a 2-hour movie of the week so fast.
Yeah.
Feature people, their minds were blown. And the development does also go fast.
Yeah. For sure, at that time, people in features definitely looked down.
Yes.
Looked down on television. And that's
I don't know about the crew, but in my mind, that kind of switched with John Travolta a bit, because he did Welcome Back, Carter, and then he was cast in Saturday Night Live. And for actors,
Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, Saturday Night Fever. Thank you. Saturday Night Live is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And it was good for actors that they could start going back and forth.
But I think writers and directors didn't as much. And
no,
I'm actually looking, I think, oh no, it was after. I was going to say, so Lily Tomlin did a movie called Moment by Moment. It was very odd. It was a romance with her and Travolta. She cast him in that before Saturday Night Fever came out, although I'm seeing that the movie came out, Saturday Night Fever came out in 1977, and I think Moment by Moment came out in 1978. But I remember when she told me that she was going to do this movie and she cast John Travolta. And I remember saying to her, the Welcome Back, Kotter guy?
Yes. You could be right on the timeline. They could have rushed Saturday
Night Fever out. Yeah.
And if those producers had enough power, they could have even held back moment by moment.
Right. Yeah.
What did Lily say? Do you remember?
She said something along the lines of, yeah, and he's great. It was a strange movie. Didn't really work, but certainly not his fault.
Speaking of superstars.
Yes.
You, Pat Resnick, have worked with Cher.
Yes.
Tell me everything.
I love Cher. Cher is one of the people I was lucky enough to work with pretty early in my career. What happened was Sandy Gallen, who was a superstar manager, and he actually not only managed Cher and Dolly, he had a company called Sand Dollar with Dolly, and they made movies. I rewrote a movie for them called Straight Talk. But because of my connection with Sandy, he asked me, okay, backing up, Cher at that time would do a special, an hour special once a year for television. And they would hire sketch writers, which I really wasn't, but I had written sketches for Lily Tomlin's first Broadway show. I met her on the set of a film that Altman directed.
Wow.
So people would ask me to write sketches. And so Sandy asked me to write a sketch for Cher and the guest star of the first special, who was Dolly. And that's actually how I met Dolly. The second year, the star was supposed to be Kate Jackson, who was one of the original television Charlie's Angels and was Cher's best friend. But somehow at some point they got into an argument and Kate Jackson walked off. Kate Jackson was probably 35 at the time, I'm guessing. And they replaced her with Lucille Ball, who I think was about 80 in the same sketch. And then Lucille Ball decided to do a different sketch, and somehow it became Shelley Winters. So anyway, that was a clusterfuck. But Cher was great. Cher is very down to earth. She was the kind of person that if you worked with her and hadn't seen her for a few years, if you ran into her at a party, she would not only remember you, she would say hello. And when she was talking to you, she wouldn't look over your shoulder to see if there was anybody more important behind you that she would rather be talking to. And she used to have, I used to love this, she used to have garage sales at her house by invitation only. Her house was gated and you had to be invited. And at no point in my life, even at my thinnest, could I ever fit into anything that Cher fit into. But I did buy a pair of her thigh-high boots, which I still have.
Oh, you better.
I still have. And my daughter wore them to high school one day. And
I have someone bought it for me. Do you remember, because I cannot find it anywhere on the internet, way, way back in the day, she had a catalog and she sold things. They were very gothic things. And I have a Cher, like little jewelry box that's in the shape of a heart. And it's one of my very favorite things.
That's very cool.
Not as cool as your stories, Patricia, but thank you so much.
Yeah. Anyway, she was wonderful. And I recently got to know a young woman who helped her. I don't know what she did exactly, but was somehow involved in helping her with her memoir, and said that's still exactly how she is. She has not.
Wonderful. Yes, I'm going to be at some point doing a cross-country trip. And I think her autobiography is one of the things that I'm going to listen to. Can we continue? Can we continue with TV? Do you mind still talking a little bit about TV? Great. You wrote 2 episodes of one of my favorite shows, Better Things. You wrote season 4, episode 5. Of course, I'm going to mess up saying the simple word. It's the spaghetti. Can you say it?
Carbonara.
Carbonara,
Yeah.
and season 4, episode 8, Father's Day. I watched both episodes, love them.
Thank you.
Now, on Carbonara, Louis C.K. is credited. Were you in the same room as Louis C.K.? Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, no, not at all. Pamela Adlon, who created Better Things and is the genius behind it. She starred in it with most, I think, all the later episodes she directed. She ran the room. She was a recurring character on Louis, which was Louis C.K.'s half-hour show. And they together concocted the idea for Better Things, which was fairly closely based on Pamela's real life. Divorced mom, 3 kids. Her mother lives down the street. She takes care of her. And she's a working actress in Hollywood, but not a star. So pretty close to Pamela's real life. And they wrote all the episodes together. Then all the stuff came out about him and he got canceled. And so he could no longer do the show with her, at which point she realized that if she was going to move forward, she felt she didn't want to do it alone. She wanted a writer's room. And so each season, I think that started with season 3. She had a writer's room, season 4, season 5. He still got a credit on every show because he's the co-creator.
Okay.
But he was not anywhere around.
Was there a draft of the script that he did some work on? Then you guys took it over?
No, he was way off the show by then.
Really? Because I think
it's not a writing credit. He doesn't have a
I think
credit.
IMDb has him on there. That's why I was
that's incorrect. I should go in and do something about that. No.
Oh, okay.
He just has a co-creator credit at the top of every episode.
That makes so much sense. I get it now. I'm going to hop around and I'm going to jump to your stand-up and then come back. Because I know you're doing stand-up and you're out there with a lot of females, younger female comics. Do they know of Louis? Do they talk about him? Is he persona non grata or they just don't discuss him?
I haven't heard him mentioned, honestly.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, but no, I really haven't heard him.
That's probably a good thing. Nobody's even thinking about him. Now, you also worked on the final season of Mad Men, another incredible series. You were the consulting producer. Now, I'd like to talk to you about Matt Weiner. I was doing estate managing for a while. And so I worked for Linda Bretler, his wife.
Yeah. Yes.
And very much involved in the house and the kids. Oh my goodness, those kids. I love them so much. And I really admired Linda. But recently, Sosha Mamet told Hollywood Reporter about his mistreatment of her on set. Now, it wasn't just maybe she took a comment wrong or she was being really sensitive. It's pretty brutal. He yelled at her for almost a half hour in front of the crew. What was your experience? What was it like for you there with the writers? Because now you're not an actor. You're in the writer's room. It's separate.
Mad Men was actually the first time I ever worked in a writer's room. And it was pretty late in my career to try to enter a writer's room. But what happened was when my kids were growing up, I really wanted to do things that I could work on from home. I didn't want to be gone all the time. So hence the TV movies. And then there was a long period of time I was working on the musical of 9 to 5. But when my older child went to college and my younger was in 11th grade and that's when they go into their room and they don't talk to you for a couple of years anyway. I thought, you know what? I could work in a writer's room if somebody would be willing to hire me at this point. I knew Matt a little bit because his oldest son, Martin, and my son were in school together The kids were old enough to drive, and he and my son were friendly. He slept over there one day, and I went over one morning to pick him up, and Matt was in the kitchen making breakfast for the kids, and we got to talking.
He loved that griddle in the kitchen.
He did. He was making pancakes. That's funny.
Yep.
Anyway, I heard through the grapevine after that, for the last season, the couple that had been the showrunners had left the show, and he had one of the writers, semi-cellist, was going to be running the room, but that he was looking for a couple of new writers, and he definitely wanted one female. So I went back to my Altman playbook and I emailed him. And Matt, before Matt worked on The Sopranos, he worked on sitcoms. And so I wrote to him and I said, I know I'm known more for comedy, but if anybody should know that someone can write both, it would be you. And I hear you're hiring, and all I would like is, can I get my sample script in the pile?
Patricia, again, I'm just going to hold you up as a model to all our writers. What a great opening line, because it wasn't, Matt, help me out. Our kids go to school together. You offered him up what will benefit for him, be able to write drama and comedy.
He said yes, and I guess it went in the pile. According to him, he told me later, the pile initially went to the execs, and I made it out of the pile, and it was one of the few scripts they had called out that landed on his desk. And I ended up meeting with him, and yeah, he hired me to be a consulting producer. And that was my first time in a writer's room.
Consulting producers sometimes don't come in all week.
So I didn't come in every day. I came in 2 to 3 days a week, and I alternated. There were 2 other consulting producers, a woman with a lot of TV credits named Lisa Albert, and the unbelievably famous screenwriter Robert Townsend, who wrote, we'll start with Chinatown, and then almost every famous movie of that era, he either wrote or had his finger in. I learned a tremendous amount. It was an extremely smart room. It was a very big room. There were a lot of writers.
Over 10?
He also had 2 advertising consultants, one who worked in the period and one who worked in advertising now. And they switched off, but I'd say often there were about 10 people. Better Things was half that.
Very interesting. Now, for the writers out there who don't quite understand, the room can be very intense. Yes, you're sitting at a table. Yes, there's chatting, but your brain has to be on. And you're pitching, trying to figure things out. It's a lot to get into when you're used to being a writer like you were, that you have your own space and you put your own ideas on the paper. And there's rules. You can't just go, I don't like that idea. You have to say it in a nice way and add in a suggestion. You just don't get to tear people down.
Yeah. You can if you're the showrunner.
You can if you're absolutely right. Back to you. Was Matt running the room, or was he mostly on set, editing, all that kind of stuff?
So the first couple of months, he was in the room pretty much full time with us because they hadn't started shooting yet, because we had to turn out a couple of scripts. And then once shooting started, he was pulled between, this is the life of the showrunner, if you're doing a show that's shooting while people are still writing. Some shows, like I worked on a show called Tales of the City for Netflix, we did all the scripts before they started shooting. So that was a different situation. But I think more often, people are still writing as shooting has started. So he was then pulled between the room, casting, directing, wardrobe, any of the 10 billion dailies, editing, all the other things that he had to be in charge of. So he was then in and out.
It's a very intense job. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things were cool in the room. Everybody was nice to each other.
I found it a really lovely room. I was worried because other than myself and a writer named David Iserson, everybody had been together for a while. And I thought it might be cliquey where they wouldn't want the new people. That wasn't the case at all. Not at all.
Good.
And it was one of the shows that I worked on where I feel like everybody was working really hard to try to do whatever they could to help Matt get his vision to the screen and help it be the best that it could be.
That last episode, there was a lot of pressure on you guys to carry the Madman name home. Everybody had such great expectations for that last episode. And I think you guys hit it out of the park.
I think he did a great job. I actually was gone by then, but I think he did an amazing job. I was worried because Matt had a history throughout the show of he would often read fan. I don't know if he went on Reddit or where he was reading stuff, but he would go on social media and he would read all the way along what people thought was going to happen, what they wanted to happen, what they didn't want to happen. And if there was something that everybody thought would happen, he wouldn't want to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was a contrarian. And because of that, and because everybody wanted, or the vast majority of people wanted Peggy to have somewhat of a happy ending and a successful romance, I was thinking, oh God, he's going to kill her in a car wreck or something. But he didn't. I thought it was one of the better finales and really satisfying. The only person that had a pretty sad end was Betty.
What happened to Betty?
She dies of lung cancer. But here's the thing. Everybody in that show smokes their heads off for 7 seasons. And he said it would be ridiculous that someone didn't get lung cancer. And I think Betty was very loosely based on his mother. And if one has mother issues, I guess killing off the character based on them is satisfying.
Those studios were downtown. I've been in every lot, every little industrial section of this town working. I've never worked down there. Are those cool studios? Do you like it down there when you're working?
Yes, it was really nice. And the nicest thing about it was, so for the people that don't know, when you work on a show, you get lunch during the course of the day. And most shows have a dollar limit.
I can tell you it's $19.
Okay. So on Mad Men, by Mad Men season 7, guess what? There was no limit. And we were in downtown LA, which was filled with some of the best restaurants in Los Angeles. And you could order anything you wanted. So a lot of us would just order stuff and take half of it home, and that was dinner.
When I was working on Hell on Wheels, which is an AMC show, almost every day somebody made a joke. I wonder what the Mad Men people are eating.
God, we were eating everything.
Hey, when you and I were coming up, scripts were actually written on paper. You printed out the script. And today, even hard copies are frowned upon. Can you share any little experiences or anything of what it was like to write back in the day on a TV series or a film as opposed to now? Do you find things different or things don't change?
No, it's really different. First of all, the first many years of my career, I was working on a typewriter when they came out with the IBM Selectric, which you didn't have to use. What was the white paper?
Whiteout? Carbon.
Yeah, you didn't have to use whiteout when you had a mistake. The IBM Selectric had a little white tape. You could go over it if you had a typo, but everything was typed, which meant that rewriting was really difficult. And basically what you would end up having to do is so let's say a scene started halfway down a piece of paper, but you were keeping the top half. So you would literally get a scissors and cut it and then have a glue stick or tape
Oh my goodness.
and then type the new one and cut that and tape it together. And then you do that through the whole script. And then there was a place called Barbara's Place, and their entire business was retyping scripts and binding them and putting them in a nice cover. Because even though we wrote scripts and typed, we were not as adept typists as professional typists. So it was really different. The plus side to that was I find that now they bother you to rewrite every little thing constantly because they know it's on a computer. It's not such a big deal to do it, but you get asked to do it a lot more. But it used to be so much harder. And I actually know a couple of people that came up when I did, one of whom is still working, and she still writes her first drafts by hand.
Really?
That I didn't do. But yeah. And she'll then have them input and she'll rewrite on the computer.
Okay. When you are out and about and people find out that you wrote the movie 9 to 5, do their faces just light up and do they pepper you with endless questions like I'm going to do next?
I would say generally the reaction is very positive. Often they want to tell me their relationship to the movie. You know, it was one of the first VHSs we had in the house, and we used to watch it all the time. And then I would say the number one question is, what is Dolly really like? And when I talk about how wonderful she is, everybody says the same thing, some version of, oh, thank God, if you had told me anything other than that, I would have been absolutely crushed.
I agree. I would have been absolutely crushed. She's an amazing human being.
She's just an incredible human being.
Yes. Now, what is the name of the movie? Is it NINE to FIVE, or is it numeral 9 to 5? I see it everywhere, both ways.
So when the movie originally came out, as I recall, it was spelled out. Somehow over the years, it devolved. I'm actually looking at, I have on my wall a Japanese poster.
Oh, cool.
From back in the day, which has the numbers. The musical, we absolutely went with the numbers. We never spelled it out. But it's funny because the musical, which was on Broadway in 2009, Dolly did the music and lyrics and I did the book. And it probably does 100 or more productions a year, everything from high schools to touring companies, summer stock. And there's a company that handles that if you want to do it, or if you want to do one of the other hundreds of musicals they perform this service for, you contact them and they're the ones who will get everything you need to you. But I noticed recently that if you were searching, it only came up if you put the numbers.
Oh.
And I contacted them and I said, please also put it spelled out, because somebody may go on there, spell it out, it won't come up. They'll think you don't have it and they'll move on to another show, which I don't want you to, because I get some money every time the show hits.
Could you explain to the writers with regards to Broadway what writing the book means?
Writing the book is everything that's spoken. It's what we would call the play. I don't know why in a musical it's referred to as the book.
I think they just wanted to be different, is my personal opinion.
But that's what it is. It's just anything that's not sung.
Yes. Can you share with the listeners, the babies out there that might not, and I'm not saying that as in a rude way, just meaning maybe you're young, but the youngins, the youths, the plot of 9 to 5? Would you mind?
Yeah, sure. It's three secretaries who work for the world's worst boss. And although at the beginning they're divided, they eventually unite in an attempt to take over the office and make some much needed changes. And it's a flat out comedy.
It is a brilliant comedy. Now, is it true 9 to 5 was supposed to be a drama?
Not that I knew of. So what happened was Jane Fonda got involved. Jane Fonda, who's an activist and has been most of her life, got involved with an organization that was trying to unionize clerical workers and get some rights for them.
How lovely.
Yeah. And they're still around, by the way. And she decided that she wanted to make a movie that somehow brought that in front of people. But from when I first heard about it, I actually read about it. There was a guy named Army Archerd who wrote, it would be like the page 6.
From Variety?
Yeah. It was in the little gossipy column. He put that Jane Fonda wanted to make a movie about secretaries with Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton. And I read that. And so Lily gave me my first paid writing job. And Dolly, I knew a bit from that Cher special. So when I read that, I thought, and I didn't know Jane Fonda, but I've always been a huge fan. And I thought, I want to write that. And I asked my agent to find out if there was a writer attached yet. And there wasn't. And we were both with what was then William Morris, now WME. And they sent over a couple of script samples of mine to Jane, and she liked them. And I ended up meeting with her, and she gave me just a huge stack of the driest material about offices and clerical workers. And she said, but I want it to be a comedy because I think that will make what I want to say more palatable to people.
Jane is right.
Yeah. And then she sent me off to try to come up with a story, one apart for each of the three women.
Was she good at notes, giving you script
She's
notes?
very smart. She did China Syndrome, which also was a message movie, which did very well at the time. The toughest problem for me with Jane was, and it's funny because she plays comedy well, she's not a funny person. She's a serious person. And so sometimes there would be comedic lines of dialogue or things that happened, and she would read them and she'd say to me, now, why am I saying this? Or why is this happening? And I would say, because it's funny. And then she would say, why is it funny? Which you cannot explain ever about anything.
I love that. I love that story. I really do. Now, I'm not sure if I'm on solid ground on this, but do you think the critics really understood the feminist undertones?
No.
Okay, good. So I am, okay. The workplace sexism, a gender pay gap.
When the original movie came out, no. And by the way, when the show went to Broadway, so when the movie came out, it was dismissed. First of all, other than Pauline Kael, I think all the newspaper reviewers at the time and magazine reviewers were all men. So we'll start there. It was dismissed as just silly. And then in 2008, when we were rehearsing to open on Broadway, again, at that time, primarily male journalists who were interviewing me would ask me, is it going to be set back then or was it going to be contemporary? And I said, no, it's going to be set back then. And they all said, but how is a contemporary audience going to relate? All these problems have been fixed. So that was prior to Me Too. And I think that most men really had no idea how much of that was still going on. By the time the musical was revived in 2019 on the West End in London, that was no longer the case. There were many more female critics. Our reviews were much, much better. And they often mentioned the political underpinnings.
Bravo, London. Bravo. I just roll my eyes, but it's also just frustrating to hear that they were saying, hey, we fixed all those problems, ladies.
It was jaw-dropping.
Oh my goodness. Now, how did you feel about the final cut of 9 to 5? Was there a premiere? Did you go to a premiere? Yeah. Oh, please tell me about that evening.
First of all, it wasn't the first time I saw the movie. There usually is a cast and crew screening.
Okay.
And so I saw it there. I had a lot of trouble with it because we had a hard time getting a director that both Jane and the studio wanted, who could work in the very narrow window of time we had where all three ladies were free. It was a very tiny window. And Jane originally wanted some of the directors that she had worked with who were the top guys. So Sidney Pollack, Mike Nichols, who actually wanted to direct it. I got to go to New York for 2 weeks and meet with him in his unbelievable apartment overlooking Central Park every day for 2 weeks to rewrite it based on what he wanted. But that script, the only people that liked it were Mike and me, nobody else. Anyway, we had a real problem getting a director. And finally, there was a guy who was really trying to get the job. And eventually they said, okay, his name was Colin Higgins. He'd only directed one movie. I believe he had directed Foul Play, but he had written Harold and Maude, and he had written Silver Streak, I think it was called. Anyway, but he was a writer-director. So of course he rewrote it. And that was shocking to me because he didn't want me around. He didn't want me on the set. Altman always had the writer or writers on the set, always. And you were extremely involved. As a matter of fact, we did most of the dealing with the actors because I think he didn't really want to. Working on something where the director didn't really want me around was weird. And I remember at the time I said that it felt like it would be like if you had a child and when they were about 10 years old, somebody took them and sent them off to military school. And then you went to visit them and you looked at them and you were like, it was your child, but they had a buzz cut and were in a uniform. And so it wasn't really your child. It was like that.
Yeah.
And that was hard. That was hard for me.
I bet.
Yeah.
Whenever I look at credits and I see written by a writer's name and then I see the director's name next to it, I'm always like, there's some bullying going on that set. And for some people, I don't know this director, but they'll just do it. They'll just do rewrites just to get their name on it. And that takes money out of your pocket.
Yes.
And I don't like that.
Yes.
And I can't imagine you in New York just working with Nichols and now Silver Streak comes in. A little disappointing.
Yeah. It was tough.
If there was one thing, if, it was a magic night and somebody woke you up and said, you can go back and fix one thing in 9 to 5 that you weren't really thrilled about.
Yeah.
Do you have anything in mind?
Yeah. And it's funny because it's a lot of people's favorite part of the movie. But.
Can you give me hints? Can I guess?
Sure. Take a guess.
You said favorite part of the movie. We all really like those opening credits, but that's good, right?
Not the opening credits.
Okay.
Which actually were directed by somebody completely different.
Oh, okay. That makes sense now. Oh, I love everything Dolly's doing. For some reason, I really like that scene with Lily Talman and her son. I had never seen a mother and son interact that way before.
So it was the fantasies
Oh.
And why I would want to change them is my original script was a much blacker comedy. And my original conception was they actually try to kill their boss, but in funny ways. And Colin, and it's weird because he wrote Harold and Maude, which is so dark, but then he wrote that when he was at UCLA. Later, his movies became much more less dark and more commercial, but he wanted it. Jane was worried about it. Jane was concerned that people wouldn't feel sympathy for the women if they tried to kill him. And his comedy taste, he told me, was more like he liked Abbott and Costello, that kind of thing. And he replaced them trying to kill him with getting stoned and having the fantasies. So even though the fantasies people really like, that's probably what I would take out.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. Now, I read that Jennifer Aniston and Echo Films, her production companies, are considering a remake with Ariana Grande, Sydney Sweeney, and Zendaya as the leads. Now, all three of those actors would be great, but who would you like to see in a remake as the leads of 9 to 5?
We've been trying to either remake it or reboot it or do a sequel for years. And I've worked on 2. The last one I had, after Me Too happened, I had an idea of how to do it with 3 new women and bringing in the 3 original women like halfway through. And I met with Lily and Jane and pitched it to them, and they liked it. And then I had a phone call with Dolly, and she liked it. And then I called my manager and I said, I have a way to redo it. I've got all 3 of the original. What do we do now? And so we went to Sean Levy, who's the producer of Stranger Things and a lot of very big movies. He came on it. And then we decided we would pitch it to Fox. But I thought I'd have a better chance selling it if I brought on a younger writer, because at that point I had been really just running TV for a long time. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be helpful if it was a writer of color, because we wanted to make the new casting less all white. And in fact, the musical, as it's been touring and everything, I've noticed that they're casting it all over the place in terms of race, which I think is great. But we got Rashida Jones involved. And at that point, we were talking about, I'm trying to remember, we were talking about like Jennifer Lawrence and Issa Rae. And then I can't remember who else. The Sydney Sweeney's and Ariana Grande certainly is like massive star power. It would definitely get noticed. The only thing I don't like about that is that they're substantially younger.
Yes, I was thinking that.
Jane, I think, was in her early 40s. Lily was in her late 30s, and Dolly was probably in her early 30s. But my understanding and the way that movies work is no one even told us that they were remaking it. Lily didn't know, Jay didn't know, Dolly didn't know, I didn't know. Colin Higgins passed away years ago, so we had no idea. And from what I've read, Diablo Cody is writing it, and instead of making it patriarchy, she's making it generational. So I believe she described it as boomers versus millennials. Which
I don't like that.
I also think now would be more Gen more Gen X versus Gen Z. Boomers are not, people my age are not in the office very much anymore. But that's what they're doing with it. So if that's what they're doing with it, then it makes sense that you would want to cast the 3 women young.
Yes, the 3 of them do play very young, and I have no idea what the plot is, but I don't like the pitting the women maybe against other women just because they're older, but maybe it all works out in the end.
Yeah, I have no more idea than you do. I don't even know where you read about the 3 women. I hadn't even heard that.
I'll go back through my research and I can send that to you if you want to.
Yeah, I'm just curious, but
cool. Sure. Back to the original 9 to 5.
Yes.
would you play F, Marry, Kill with Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton for us?
I wouldn't, only because I'd fuck any of them. I wouldn't kill any of them, but I'd definitely marry Dolly.
I agree. I'm with you.
Okay.
Now, last week, I was fortunate enough to see you do stand up at the Improv in West Hollywood. First of all, Patricia, it's been a long time since I've been out, especially on the West Side. It was such a lovely evening. Our mutual friend, Darlene Chan, and her husband, Frank, we walked in West Hollywood to go see you. Can you talk about how you ended up on stage at the Improv on Melrose Avenue?
It was a very fluky thing. It's just about a year ago, August, my 92-year-old mom passed away, and the funeral was in New York, and my son and I were flying back to LA. And I happened to be seated next to a guy. I call him a young guy. My son he wasn't that young. He's probably in his late 30s. My son's 29. I'm like, okay, everybody's young to me at the moment. But he was a television writer. And he told me that he really had wanted to be writing more comedy. And I asked him what he'd been working on. And he'd been working on 7 seasons of possibly the least funny television show ever aired, which is Law and Order SVU, which I love, but no comedy in it. But he had decided he wanted to write comedy, and somehow he had heard through friends about a guy who teaches stand-up. And he thought that would be a great way to learn how to write jokes. And he took the class and he started telling me about the class. And the class just sounded so appealing to me. And I've never had any desire to be on stage. In the mid 80s, the Improv was my hangout, mostly because my cocaine dealer was there, which was something I was doing up until the middle of the 80s when that all stopped.
Patricia, who wasn't?
Yeah, everybody was. But I got to be friendly with a lot of the comics, and they knew that I wrote comedy, so they would ask me to see their sets and get them notes. And then they were all like, you should do this. And I was like, oh my God, I would never do that. That just sounds like a complete nightmare. But I thought, I was sad. I lost my mom. I thought I'm going to take this class. And I'll learn more about joke writing, because even though I write comedy, I don't really write jokes. So I took the class, and what I didn't know was, until I had already paid for it, was the class ended with, after many weeks, and by the way, it's a wonderful class. The guy's name is Jerry Katzman. You can look him up. I highly recommend it. At the end, you have to do a 5-minute set in a showcase where there's usually 10 people in the class. Everybody invites 10 people. So you're in front of roughly 100 people. And the day of the showcase, I was so nervous. I thought I was going to throw up. And I thought this was just a really bad idea. And I really just want to hand my set to someone else and let them go up and do it. But I had to do it. And he put me next to last, which meant that I had to sit there working myself up into a complete frenzy. But the second I got up on the stage, I was very comfortable. I'm not afraid of speaking in front of people. That's not one of my fears. I'm afraid I'm going to forget, what I'm going to say, or that people wouldn't laugh. Anyway, it went incredibly well. It was a real adrenaline rush, and I got the bug. And then someone else asked me to do a show, and I thought, I'm just going to ride this train and see where it goes. So that's what I've been doing.
Now, I noticed while watching you do your stand-up, you connected the jokes seamlessly. You just didn't hop from one joke to the other. And the other comics, they were hilarious. And this is a lab, so it's not like you're coming out and doing a perfect set. Am I correct in that? It was a lab?
They call it the Improv Lab.
Okay. sometimes you're just working things out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And it had that feel. It had a little bit of a loose feel.
Yeah.
But I want to explore that a little further. Do you think because of your background in writing and you had to always answer maybe to someone, people were reading and they're giving you notes, is your process for writing jokes different from your other writing? I think you're almost a little advanced in your joke writing. You're almost like creating a set as opposed to just joke. Did you realize you were doing that?
I think, here's the thing. You absolutely don't have to set up jokes. You can jump from joke to joke as long as they're funny. I have a very good friend of mine who's been really wonderful. He was part of a stand-up comedy team for many years. He's been retired now. But when I was first starting out, he would come see my sets and he would give me advice, sometimes performance notes or hit this word harder or wait here. But one of the things he said to me was, you don't have to set up your jokes. You can just jump from joke to joke. But I think for me, that's hard to do. And I think you hit on it. It's because I write scripts where you don't just drop things in out of nowhere. So the set that you saw, the first joke, which is the Tesla joke, really doesn't connect to anything, but I say, oh, I noticed something on my way over here tonight. Okay. And then all my next jokes have to do with my age, and it's some way or another. And then I switch, and the second half of the set is all about being a gay, single, sober mom of 2 kids by donor insemination. But I do set that up. I have a sentence that sets that up so that I'm not suddenly just, I was talking about my age and now I'm talking about stuff that happened a long time ago. My kids are 29 and 31. So I do try to set it up. I notice a lot of the younger comics will often say to me, oh my God, your writing is so good. You know, and sometimes they don't know what my background is. And I feel like I'm cheating. Because I have 40 some odd years experience as a writer. Some of them are really funny and great performers. They're not really writers. They're just learning that part of it.
Now, open mic nights can be tough. Are you doing open mic nights?
I do some open mic nights. And here is what I learned, because stand-up comedy is certainly a business that's adjacent to movies and TV, but it is its own business. And so I had to learn. It's like when I went to work on Mad Men, before I went to work, I took someone out to lunch who'd done a ton of TV. And I was like, now what's a showrunner? Am I the showrunner? And she said, no, you were not the showrunner. I was like, what am I? What is a writer's room? So stand-up comedy was the same thing. I always thought my idea of open mics was that you went to, people showed up at these evenings. There was an audience who were there to see whoever showed up, and you would sign up and then you would get up and you would do 5 minutes or whatever for that audience. And that's how you would work stuff out. Because when you first write a joke, it's very hard to tell what's going to work, what's not going to work. You might find it funny. Maybe nobody else finds it funny, or it needs an adjustment, but you don't know till you get it in front of people. It actually turns out most open mics are not that. At least in LA, they're not. Most open mics, the audience is the other people who want to get up at the open mic.
Yes.
They are other comics. They are not necessarily a particularly good audience.
No, they are not.
I have done open mics where I did some stuff that I had done at real shows and it consistently killed and it didn't get even a chuckle. So I find them not, they're good for if you want to time stuff out or just get comfortable saying it in front of people. They're not that helpful I find in terms of figuring out what's going to work and what's not going to work. What I do instead now is when I'm doing a smaller show, I will sandwich in some new stuff in between stuff I know is going to work. So that way, you don't want to do a whole show of new stuff because if none of it works, you have not entertained people. But if you sandwich it in, it's fine. Every single joke is not going to be a banger. The other open mics, and I haven't done these, but the big comedy stores, so like the Comedy Store or the Improv, they have open mics, but those aren't really open mics. They're curated. So once a week, you can go stand in a line there forever and give them your name. And then allegedly it's done by lottery or who gets there first. But I don't know if that, I've heard they pick the people they know. I don't know. I have no idea because so far I'm not willing to go stand in a line for an hour for a chance to maybe get up. There is a real audience. What's good about those is often the booker from the show, from those places, will see those open mics and you might get booked. But so far I haven't done that.
I think you came up with a good solution when you're doing a show like that I saw, get some new material in there.
Yeah, I'm working on a set right now. I'm going to do a 10-minute set. It's actually a fundraiser for Senator Adam Schiff, who is one of our two senators from the state of California.
Yes.
So he's doing a fundraiser, and it's a very big deal for me because the closer is Sarah Silverman, and I'm going to be the opener, and that's a big thing. So I'm going to do 10 minutes. So I'm trying to make sure I have the best 10 minutes I can. So the show that you saw was me trying out some stuff to see this I know is going to be in. This is questionable. This is new. Let me see how it goes. So I knew right away there's one new thing that did great. I'll keep in. There was one old joke I brought back. It did okay. I'll take it out. And there's one I'm still on the fence, but I'm going to do a show before that other show, and I'll do that again and see how it goes.
Patricia, that is so exciting. I would love a follow-up. Just call me and tell me how that evening went. That sounds really exciting.
I'm very excited about it.
Are you seeing anybody out there that you're really excited about? Do you have any comics that you've liked over the years?
It's funny. I'm not like a big stand-up comedy fan. I find a lot of the specials, I start watching them and I lose interest, but I do listen in the car a lot. There's a number of stand-up comedy stations.
Yes, Series has. That's when I listen to stand-up.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them, and I switch back and forth, just trying to hear what other people are doing, what I think is funny. And the problem with it is a lot of times I don't know who it was. I would say, who do I really like? I did a show one night with Okatsuka.
Oh, she has the funny haircut?
Yes.
She's funny.
Seeing her live, I found her really funny. The person who I would say almost consistently can make me laugh is Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais's piece on how dogs got their jobs is truly, I could watch that over and over. It's so funny.
You just said his name and it made me smile.
Yeah, I just find him very funny. I haven't seen her in a long time. I might still love her, but early Margaret Cho, like her first two specials,
yes,
I thought were really funny.
Is it true that you pretended to write articles for your high school paper and you convinced celebrities to grant you interviews?
Yes.
What did you get? And how did you obtain that kind of contact information before the internet?
Let me think. So some of these people, nobody's going to know who they are anymore. But, okay, Dionne Warwick.
Goddess.
Robert Goulet. Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft.
Oh, Wait, hold the phone. Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft?
They were together.
Oh, of course, yes, but wow. I'm sorry, that just takes my breath away.
And wait, this one's the best. She didn't do the interview, but I did get a signed photograph, and she did open the door to her own hotel room. Joan Crawford.
She opened the door?
I knocked on her hotel room door and it was opened, and there was Joan Crawford. And she told me she didn't have the time, but if I gave her my name and address, she would send me a signed 8x10, which I didn't think she would. But a couple weeks later, I got an envelope that had the Pepsi logo, because at that time she was married to the CEO of PepsiCo. And it was a signed 8x10 of Joan Crawford.
Do you still have the 8x10 of Joan?
I do.
You know, that scene in Mommy Dearest where she's schooling the Pepsi board. Brilliant.
Yes. Yeah.
Patricia Resnick, I so appreciate all the time that you are spending with us and your stories. I'm going to have a hard time editing this because I've been laughing over you this entire time.
Thank you.
What is the best piece of writing advice you ever received?
That I ever received, I would say it was two things. One was fairly late in my career, and it was Matt Weiner. And it wasn't specifically advice to me, but it was just something that he often said in the room. So very often when he was called out for a while, we would continue to work on whatever episode we were on, whatever we were trying to figure out. And we would put a lot of time and a lot of very good brains into it and a lot of talented writers. And we would come up with the best thing we could. And then he would come in and he'd say, okay, what do you got? Walk me through it. And he would be walked through it. And often he would say, yeah, that's good. Do better. And what that taught me was that sometimes I think we think that our first idea, whether it's a whole idea or how to fix something or how to do something, is the best idea. It probably isn't, because we're probably accessing it from everything else we've ever seen, and it's probably not fresh. So that I learned a lot from that. The thing that I learned, maybe, 8 to 10 years into my career that saved me a lot of arguments and trouble was, and now it's pretty known, but I hadn't heard of it then, which is look for the note behind the note. So if you're a writer, you are going to get a lot of notes. You're going to get notes from studio execs, producers, actors, directors. Everybody's going to have some idea of how they think you can make your thing better or fix something. And often what people do is they'll tell you what they think is wrong, and then they'll give you an example of how they think you should change it. Often the example is really stupid or doesn't work. They're not seeing is, if you do that, you're now pulling on a thread up at the middle that's going to unravel at the end. However, when I was young, what would happen is if the example they gave you was really dumb, I would dismiss the note. Just because the example isn't good doesn't mean the note's not good or right. And the other thing is something I just learned over the years, which is do not fall in love with your first draft. I always thought, no, my best draft's the first draft. It probably isn't.
Yes.
So those are the three pieces of advice that I think helped me the most.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Would you like to share your social media handles or where you're going to perform next?
Absolutely. On Instagram, it's Patricia.Resnick, Resnick. Please follow me. I will always put what my next show is, where it is, and hopefully a link to tickets. That's the best place to go.
Great. Patricia, thank you so much. I had such a great time talking with you. And will you come back?
100%. This was terrific. I really enjoyed it.
And that's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Your positive feedback will help us keep the show going so we can continue bringing you more future episodes. Remember, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards with executive producer Kristin Overn, producers Sandy Adomaitis, and myself, Terry Sampson. And our music is composed by Ethan Stoller.